Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do Pepe Deluxe album number 4. I'll talk about in the leading up to Comix Sonix, the 6th Pepe Deluxe album on June 21st, 2024. So here to do the one, the condition of this is not the best. The one that introduced me to the band and I became a fan and won me over, and I kind of go back and forth, but kind of consider the best record of the last, basically since Blood Moon. I don't think a record I've liked more. I mean, River Empires I love too, it's just splitting hairs, but I got more mileage out of this record, but unfortunately my CD copy has taken a bit of a hit. Queen of the Wave from 2012 was released January 31st, 2012, and I looked at my original review on the All Media Reviews blog. This is now the All Media Reviews YouTube channel and podcast. I wrote it on March 14th, 2012. Of course, I've got, beyond the CD, I could pull out the disc. I have the vinyl, which is, I don't even know how easily you can get this. It's probably pretty pricey. The top of my has a little bit damaged, unfortunately, so this isn't a mint copy of the vinyl, but an esoteric pop opera in 3 parts. Pepe Deluxe, of course, I've talked about in previous videos, are largely this duo of 2 guys, James Spectrum and Paul Malmstrom from Finland, but they have a lot of other people involved. So then later that year, I want to say later that year, maybe in 2013, they issued this, which is like a box set. It's a book. Pepe Deluxe, the deluxe edition, and it comes with extra discs. And while the review today, and I have never paged through this thoroughly, I'm not going to talk about the extra disc. I've listened to them only a few times, but I think maybe a little bit like Thud. I don't know if I'll go through every track, do a video for every track like Thud. I mean, maybe it meant so much to me. But this album means so much to me in some ways, it almost may warrant it. But I at least think I probably could do a follow-up talking about this and talking about the story maybe more in depth at some point. Maybe after I'm kind of taking in some more about Comix Sonix and some other stuff. So anyway, let's get into this, the proper record. It came out January 31st, 2012. And follow up to Spare Time Machine from 2007. So it had been 5 years, and of course it's been well documented, to some at least, that Pepe Deluxe, they made this record, and then the one after it, and then the new one maybe to some degree. It took a lot more time than they might have normally taken them, because they waited to access some of these different vintage, unique, very rare instruments. The one that's probably most notable on this album is the Stalag pipe organ. So, and I'm going to mention, I'm getting the information about it correct. But anyway, so it's 48 minutes, so it's not a long record. I've said it many times before, how much I revere this record. If you've never heard Pepe Deluxe, this is an obvious place to start. Okay, you got the first track, Queen's Wave. Very atmospheric. I should be holding this up. The track list here. Does it even have the track list? No, they have the characters. It does have the track list, but I'm not going to be holding this up for... My arm's going to get tired. Queen's Wave, yeah, it's very atmospheric with an Amazon forest type sounds. Kind of like Apes and Androids' Blood Moon. I'm pretty sure that the guys from Pepe Deluxe had never even heard of him. Still haven't heard of Apes and Androids or never heard Blood Moon, but... which probably was something that previously been done. Anyway, I'm reminded of Blood Moon at the beginning of. Then it starts out kind of in a narrative. Let me sing a song for you. A storm, and later the story more than age is old. The day before the ocean won. So you hear great xylophone. The theme motif is just great. It sets the stage for this story, this journey, this tale, this epic adventure. Uses fuzz guitar, which is prominent throughout many tracks on this album. It's great stripped down snare drum. Again, that's another feature that's frequent on here. Then they use the flute is featured on this track, among others. It's both normal flute and then an alto flute I was reading about. And the lead singer, you never trust everything, entirely online and even what they write, because the guys at Pepe Deluxe, with a lot of their art, they're kind of cryptic, but it says it's on Discogs. It's by a gentleman by the name of Boyd Crompton, B-O-I. So, and then there's someone named Tesla Coil. Anyway, I wrote that down. So, great track, Queen's Wave. It sets the stage. It's got a cool motif. Goes into the next song, which they did a video for. I did a song for the next two videos, and I didn't forget to mention it's in 3 acts. So this is at part 1 or 3 parts. The second part, there's 3 parts to this, so it's the second part of this part 1. A Night and a Day. They did a video for that one and the song after, Go for Supersonic. But A Night and a Day begins with this building guitar refrain that echoes and then gets this punchy like retro guitar riffs. It's kind of their MO, and when I heard this, I'm like, this sounds like something from the 60s, but in such a great way. I was not fully buying into it first, but I was like, yeah, this is really good and really catchy, and it's like going back in time in some ways. The guitar riffs, the drums. Yeah, the video for this is in black and white, and it shows this woman doing some different stuff and like this like fishnet pantyhose and all this stuff. But eventually she grabs what is a rifle, and you see her kind of aiming on point and stuff like that. Clapping is infectious, it's clapping, and then the female vocals. So I was away. The riffs and xylophone are like glockenspiel and snare. It's super layered. But the drums are really tight. They're really tight. And the bass line, of course, is really featured. Almost danceable. It's so earwormy. It gives you great energy. What sounds like some 60s organ, it gets really catchy with this kind of motif. It's like female led groups. Then the line, now listen, sometimes I wouldn't speak, you can sense the whole, whispering, and I was aware, she builds up with I was aware, and then you get these big vocal harmonies. You got like 3 or 4 female singers at least on this, if you look at the credits. That la 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 la. Again, something that Apes and Androids did, bands from the 60s did it too. I mean, those great kind of multi-part vocal arrangements that, Phil Spector, I guess you could say, was responsible, and the Beach Boys. You name the group, but it's very much of a method or a thing that was done more often from music from the 50s and 60s, and maybe a little bit in the 70s. I guess you could say 70s also. Yeah, like Queen, the Apes, and the Androids. Then you hear some vocoder parts and chants. It's kind of computerized, but then the original motif comes back in with the tight guitar riffs. Do 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 do. The snare and the big chromatic synth play. It's so big with the echoes. It's so great. This Night and a Day is a fantastic song. So then they followed it up with another song they did a video for called Go Supersonic, which is like 60s lounge pop. Driving snare and the Dick Dale guitar surf rock, guitar riff surf rock, which is a big part of the sound on this album. Retro synths and the dreamy female vocals, driven some by that synth, the synthesizers, and the energy on. So if you do what you have done, then you will surely you want to go. And it's just that is so memorable. It's an earworm. Do 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 do. You're still making up your mind. Then the actual like chorus or motif in this song, supersonic and stepiotic. I don't think the stepiotic I don't know if there's any meaning by, unless I'm not catching that right. Repeated many times with the female singer. Go supersonic and stepiotic. We are moving out. Repeated a couple times. I know in the video it's like they're talking about like analog technology, like shortwave radios and synthesize amplifiers and televisions and like microwaves and stuff, all these different things, electronics from that vintage age of the 50s and 60s especially. And they're I believe the people in the video are dressed in that style clothing from that era, kind of like the Jetsons, but not in the future, like that. That kind of that 60s loungy kind of stuff. Rhyme with a rhythm. The second verse features harpsichord, and the song gradually builds to the bridge. Okay, okay, okay. And then we have this in the bridge. You know the house at the dock. We know the path. Night sidewalk. Da 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 da. 7 colors back to back. You better dress for action. That you hear that the drum parts like hand drums, like a djembe or never wait for reaction. Join During the race has begun. The dreamy synth. So it's very narrative. I mean, this is an adventure. This is a trip. This is a talking about people or things going on this kind of journey through different like parts of wherever they are on the Earth or in space or wherever they're supposed to be in the Middle Earth, the ends of the Earth. Yeah, they don't look back. Chanted like apes and androids with harpsichord. It's a cool narrative, again, adventure. Raise like hell till we get out of this place. I was thinking, I wonder if that was a reference to that song by is it the Animals? I think it was the Animals or maybe the Zombies. We got to get out of this place. It's the last thing we ever do. But then you hear some nice cello, which drives the part of the ending. So many vocal layers. Great groove to the chorus. The organs featured in the last minute. Last 20 seconds, there's a slowdown. Because what this album has, because it's sort of narrative and a story, it has like not vignettes, but intermezzos, or little like parts at the end of each track. They're not actually tracked on this, except like one exception. But they're just to kind of become more of a concept and a story, really. A pop opera. Yeah, and it goes into transition to part 2. So that's the end of part 1. Part 2 starts off with the track Temple of Unfed Fire, which is 2 minutes and 48 seconds. Very dreamy, more of a trip and adventure with female chanting and this surreal organ solo. It's very thematic. The organ is front and center at points in this song. Very cinematic, very retro, like a Vincent Price movie or something like that. I was thinking, like 50s, 60s Hollywoods. Then you hear these female vocals, welcome to the temple, welcome to the pyramid. The organ's just echoing back. It's so playful. I just looked it up, and like the female vocals, the lead female singer on this, and I think she's on some of the other records. But I mean, again, I should know the research on Spare Time Machine. There's a woman named Sarah Welling. But there's these other singers also, Kaisa, Sarah Corpi, Laura Kartinen, and Mina Lisa Tamela. They're kind of like a Supremes or Martha and Vandellas or Shangri-La, very much channeling those girl groups with those great vocal harmonies and arrangements. Sarah Welling's probably the most standout, but all of them are great. Then you get this super out there unique fuzz guitar or like a balalaika solo on a. It kind of gives the impression that they're kind of trip on a boat at sea. Hear the great organ, hear the master ornaments, and it's just echoing with the organ part. They're all in harmony. They're all in harmony. It's so cinematic. It segues with a synth with a synth into the next track. It's one of my favorite parts on the record. I mean, of many parts, but if I was doing like a top 10, that's got to be in the top 10. That just the organ part on that is just it's so good, so perfect. Anyway, so the second track on part 2 is the fifth track, Contain Thyself. Start off with like what sounds like a mandolin or a harp. Maybe it's acoustic guitar in both. I know there is some harp on this. The line, "Are we crossing the border of the pale? Is the end of our tale? Or are we saying goodbye to old friends?" The harpsichord is played over some whispered vocals of the harpsichord. Nothing is turning out ships, of course, day after day, sailing without remorse. This is very kind of like pirate ship kind of like telling a tale, singing along to a tale. It's like, where are we going? Where is this the end of our journey, or have we just begun? Is there more to this? Wisdom. It's very like this is a more mid-tempo piece. I really love the way the narrative in it. Wisdom to understand, kindness to strength in victory. The whistle harmonies reminds me of like 67 Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's are more likely Mystery Tour era Beatles. Love that whistle. That's I think Transatlantic used something similar in Bridge Across Forever at one point. But Contain Thyself. Then you hear Mellotron or Theremin. I think it's Mellotron. And it sounds like a mini Moog, but I think it's just Mellotron. The whistling just gets so dreamy on this part. So I love the organ on the last track, Temple of Unfed Fire, but I think it's the Mellotron arrangement is just unbelievably good on this. Very much of like a, early 70s prog band would play a part just like this, or late 60s, like Procol Harum or something. The fuzz. Then there's also, if I'm not losing my place here, the fuzz guitar with the driving snare part that kind of and goes da 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 da. The snare drum sounds very gated at the point, but dreamy vocals. Then the last verse, the female singer, one of the female, many, I think it probably is Sarah Welling again. This is the island by the edge, the end of the world, the end of our pledge. She's going to talk about the end of the world. And then you get some trumpet part that just rules. It just is fantastic. It's very majestic. Yeah, kind of Beatlesy, kind of like, Rubber Soul era Beatles, I'm thinking of the song, Got to Get You in My Life, or something like that. Tree of the Shelter and Free. She keeps on saying that. The end of the world. Tree of the Shelter and Free of the Shelter. It's echoed and kind of repeated verse. It harmonizes great. The female, I think it's probably Sarah Welling. So then let's see here. Yeah, we got a couple more tracks left on part 2. So the next part is track 6, the third track of part 2, Hesperus Garden. Starts out with a driving riff from the horns guitar and this drum roll. It's got great groove to it. A little similar to Night and a Day, but the super tight guitar riff. It's very surf rock like Dick Dale. All picked, that picking. It's just doing that picking. Totally front and center in what stands out on this song at the beginning. And then Your Mind Is Mixed Up for Good. There's like funk and soul vocals, but still very 60s-ish. Yeah, this has these little pockets, this song. Take It Back. It's so tight. Some fat minor keys, and then you go into the line, you fate is fixed, my mind is mixed up for good. Very drug. I was thinking the name of this song is Hesperus Gardens. Kind of drug influenced, because some of the lyrics are kind of nonsensical. But you get more Dick Dale coming in, more of the Dick Dale kind of guitar riffs, the surf rock, then some horns and flute as well that uses staccato, and then some organ. It is the wind from here to me, or in this garden when the breeze it touches my trees. This very much it seems to someone trying to think of poetry that are very on LSD or on at least marijuana or something like that. You always just pace, but what if we're stuck? What if my... Oh yeah, okay, so after that kind of... that you call that the bridge, I guess, that's very trippy and drug influence. She's kind of... The last verse, you always just pace. What if we're stuck? What if my goals couldn't capture yours? Behind the folded doors, And that part just builds and it's fast. Behind the folded doors. And then we get the, surf rock guitar. Oh well, oh my. My mind is mixed up for good. Yeah, very infectious, energetic track, Hesperus Garden, even though some of it seems to be sort of inspired by and using sort of chemicals or whatever, which, again, the hippie 60s, they're probably drawing some information from that period of time. But the groove is just super tight. So the 7th track, and this would be the 3rd track on the second part, 3rd or 4th, if I'm counting correctly here. Part 2, be 1, 2, 3. It'd be the 4th part. Is Grave Prophecy, 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Starts out with some flute, but it's darker tone synths. It's not like a synthesizer, but it's very darker in tone. But I believe this is the track, it might be the track that uses Stalag pipe organ, playing the, what sounds like, it's like that froggy piece that they might have used on, I think on one track on here, on Spare Time Machine. But if that's true, then that doesn't make sense, because they had to wait for the Stalag pipe organ. I didn't do the research on when the Stalag pipe organ, what tracks it's used on, but I've always, that froggy, organ part, that always, the motif reminds me of, a little bit of I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Do, 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 do. But this is, again, we get, I think it's Boyd Crompton again, the guy who sounds like Frank Sinatra. He's singing, and then you get you get Johanna Forsty, who's the other singer. This is very kind of ritualistic. Wake to the child, take a stand, let them understand. Male and female vocals chanting with flute and spacey synths. The drums are very up front, very much like a Jethro Tull thing. The Who and Jethro Tull were two of the bands I immediately thought of when I heard this band. I mean, it's more like James Bond theme and Dick Dale, but, you know, this surf rock. But I hear The Who and Jethro Tull, especially among some other bands and a lot of their music, on this record specifically. But then after we get that part, there's a lull in the middle of these dreamy synths, kind of builds, and uses a gong. We get who is it, Joanna Forsty or someone else maybe, because there's a lot of singers on every song here, unfortunately. I can't keep track of all of them. As much as I love this record, I should know them. I do not know them by the top of my head. But some whispering, a day shall come, most disappears, never to be seen by the sun again. But it's very kind of Middle Eastern Arabian atmosphere with the chanting, and there's some harpsichord that builds. It's kind of building the middle section of the song. Like something out of The Mummy or Catacombs. Think of scarabs because you think of grave prophecy. Running from scarabs, because eventually this builds in there. People are like trying to like escape from something, running away, and a prophecy. You know, people believe in prophecies and stuff. A lot of stuff with Middle Eastern stuff, like pyramids, you know, Parthenons, you know, scarabs and mummies and tombs and that kind of stuff, and catacombs. Yeah, it builds instrumentally. Then it has this quiet chanting. So that's how it ends. So. Good track. It kind of to the narrative. It adds more to the adventure. So now we come to the last track on part 2, In the Cave, which is just 1:51, and it's just a segue piece really. But running from catacombs into a cave. I'm wondering if in the narrative of the story, if I ever like page through this sucker, get more detail. Yeah, I mean, is it using an organ and some? It sounds like a piano, but like a very old piano. And then like a xylophone. It does sound like a theme from a film score. Like a transitional scene or something even used in the ending credits after a climax. Very post-rock. But the last part of part 2. But it's only 1:51 in the cave. So I think that's the one sort of like intermezzo or, whatever, interlude I was trying to think of earlier. It's like the one piece you could almost call like an interlude. There could be like 4 or 5 other interludes on this record between some of the tracks, but they're not on there. They're not labeled that way. So then we go to the final third part, the final act. The third part, it opens up with the 9th track, My Flaming Thirst, which is 3 minutes and 49 seconds. Starts out with like wind chimes, but up front, the drums are very up front in the mix. Very mid-tempo, but very dreamy. Reminds me of the Dark Shadows theme. And, I never thought about the title until a little while ago, but the title, My Flaming Thirst, I'm wondering if this might be influenced or be about some kind of vampire. A lot of it's whispering, very seductive, very romantic. Lines like deep in my mind's eye, my your blood you've given. The female vocalist very deep. I don't know if she's trying to sound like, Miss Dracula, Dracula's Bride, or something like that. That's kind of the inspiration behind it. Or who's the other famous woman who bathed in blood? I forget. But it's a tenor, maybe a baritone vocalist, but it's a female. And let's see here. You're not the one I want. That's another line that a vampire often says when they're looking at someone and someone's like offering themselves to them and like. But some dissonant harmonics on piano and organ, very dreamy piano runs, tickling the ivories. I love that. It's a very atmospheric. A lot of post-rock uses it. It's not overplaying. It just fits the texture and the tone of that part of the music. Very dreamy. The last seed of the game. He's the drop of my flaming thirst. Yeah, I mean, I like this song. It does kind of add something now thinking about what it might mean in terms of the concept and the story of these people going, trying to escape and find the end of the earth or whatever they're trying to do, and they encounter a female vampire in a castle, maybe. I'm not sure. So, okay, the next track is number 10, Iron Giant. It's pretty much a pretty big contrast, but it's 2 minutes and 22 seconds. Starts out with acoustic guitar and female chanting with distortion, like a lot of, they had, I want to say both on Supersound and on Beatitude, they did a lot of that, that distorted vocals. But it's not like large in the mix, but la-di-da-di-da. It's very kind of storybook, childlike, thematic. It's like Aesop's fable, or Gentle Giant, Jack and the Beanstalk, Aesop's, the friendly giant is compliant, la-dee-da-dee-da. Then you get this really big, cool Wall of Stone organ part, which is used again later, but on another track, but has this great groove. And then I just realized I knew there was a film that had been done. I never saw it, called something about Giant. It actually is called The Iron Giant. It was an animated film. I think it might have been Disney. It's kind of developed a cult following. I don't think it did as well as they anticipated, but it's become more popular as like a home video, home DVD, home Blu-ray, maybe streaming on kind of Disney. But The Iron Giant, I don't know how much the inspiration behind the title and the story was from that, but it could have been, even though this seems more retro from a different era, because that was done, I think, in like the mid to late 90s, maybe early, it was like late 90s, The Iron Giant. But very fairy tale-like. It's a short song, only 2 minutes 22 seconds, but they used a xylophone, they used some French horn, some trombone towards the end. It's it contrasts greatly from My Flaming Thirst, but I could see it as from a cinematic element, cinematic sort of why it fits. Okay, we're meeting like this vampire, now we're meeting this like big giant or like a mechanical giant, in our adventure to try to find the end of the earth or whatever. So, all right, track number 11, The Storm, is 343, is the next one. The last two tracks, we only have 2 tracks left. Starts out with big horns and a driving drum rhythm. Very tribal. That's pretty much what this is. It's a tribal piece. The line, listen, listen, roll of thunder, hear it rumble, oh so furious. It's kind of like maybe Native American, like whatever, indigenous, kind of, Incas, culture that uses, tribal and drums and like drum jabs, like stuff from like a powwow or something like that. Layers of strings and horns and flute are added, big horn throughout, very fast snare parts, but then we get some more Dick Dale guitar picking and some great organ that is complemented by the like of, I want to say it sounds like a wood gyro rhythm band traditional wood gyro scratcher. That instrument, I don't know if it is, but that instrument where you have that face and I want to say like some Latin American instruments use that. It's a percussive instrument that we had when I was in grade school. We played in band and stuff like that, and it sounds like that. But then there's an organ part that moves along. It's manipulated in contrast with the Dick Dale surf rock guitar part. Gets really fast and uplifting. It's happy. It's a storm. It's like this is the storm, and it's like the end of the storm. Very fast picking, and it harmonizes with percussion. Then we get some background horn parts. And some upright bass, so there's a little bit of a jazz element. I mean, you could say that parts of the storm, some of the because it's mostly an instrumental part. A lot of it's driven by the rhythm of that tribal part, but there's parts of this record it may be reprising almost. I mean, the Dick Dale thing alone, you could say in some ways is like a reoccurring, element, if not motif, throughout 3 or 4 parts of this record, 3 or 4 tracks at least. But it's kind of the MO on this album, one of the big parts of it. So the final track, the big epic final closing track, right on the first arc, 7 minutes and 18 seconds. We get front and center what I always will refer to as probably the Frank Sinatra-like lead vocals. And I think, again, it's actually done by this guy named Chris Coates. So I'm not sure if Chris Coates is the one who did the Frank Sinatra-like vocals on the track from Spare Time Machine, Captain Carter, Fathomist, or a couple of other tracks on here, but maybe Chris Coates and the other gentleman who it's got that unusual name, who I was talking about earlier. Let's see here. Sinatra. Yeah, Boy Crompton. Boy Crompton and Chris Coates. I'm not certain on who is singing what, but it's Chris Coates, the credited lead vocal on this final track, and it also is featured on the next record, which I imagine probably on the new record as well. But anyway, it's very kind of epic, thematic, very illustrative. A newborn ocean out of the blue. I think of Remembrance, the sense we lost, the sense of being lost, a new horizon blew out of the blue. There's some great harmonica that kind of goes with like an organ part, and then you get a female vocalist doing the contrasting. He forgot the unicorn only to have every kind that we could find. It's very kind of building to something really big, like a big climax. But in the tales they last, In the future, they'll sparkle again. Great, you know, again, I don't know which singer it is, Sarah Kelling or whatever her name is. It might be, or maybe one of the other singers. Very kind of channeling that kind of Motown style vocals that we love from this, even like Dusty Springfield in a way. A voyage to somewhere, just passing through. I think of remembrance, a new horizon. Then you get this chromatics, la 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 la, like do re mi fa sol la ti from other things. You know, Receiving and Sirens used something like that on their second record. The Earthling Sings Me Fa Me, but I think of Sound of Music, of course. Not Judy Garland, Julie Andrews film. With do, a deer, a female deer, that do re mi fa sol la ti do that you do it in chorus class and vocalist train and practice with. But the flute is very featured on this. Very wall of sound, like very kind of inspired by Phil Spector, I'm sure, among other things, or Brian Wilson. So much like the end of a journey, like an epiphany, keeps on getting bigger and like sort of major keys. A newborn morning blew out of the blue. Then you get like, this is about 4 minutes into the song, maybe 4.5. You get what sounds like ocean sounds and some synths being manipulated for a couple of minutes. It's kind of a calming. It begins to build a little bit with shaker and keys and a clean guitar refrain rather, which is it's kind of sad actually at that point. But then you get the big organ again that kind of closes out and ends. It sounds like a church organ. It probably is a church organ. It's the organ that was recorded from it. It was in a church. They recorded it in a church. Much as I don't love, like, when Yes did Awaken and used the church organ there, it's really cheesy. Pepe Deluxe knows how to do it. Sounds like, yeah, it's coming from a church. Quite sad, but the ending of a journey, whatever. So that's about it. I mean, you know, it's emphasize an album that's only 45 minutes. I mean, there's a million and one and more things to say about this record because they spent 5+ years making it, and they tracked 1 million tracks on it, and there's so much to the concept and the production and the mixing and just even like this stuff. They had to do a deluxe edition. That it really is. That's why I believe it is one of the most significant albums from sort of an artistic standpoint, an accomplishment from a production and a performance standpoint. It's some of the best art of the last decade and change. And you know, I mean, again, if I'm choosing records of the last 10 to 15 years, Blood Moon still goes above it because I have it just, that's like a special record to me. I can't really pick anything above this thing right now. I mean, I love Small League Sing Ships, Face Yourself in Remove Sandals. I love Hotel the Laughing Trees, Tearing Everything After, a few other records, and The River Empires is a special record to me too. But I can't deny that this album, Queen of the Wave, it just has so much going on, and they just hit it out of the park. They stuck the landing, and they just kind of, even though I was kind of like, when I heard it, I was like, yeah, but it's sort of just retro sounding, and I love it, but is this album really that good? And I was listening to it months later, I was like, is it really going to be my album of the year? It's like, yeah, I guess it is, and then it just sort of resonated. The thing, it was really well received when it came out. It was #1 on Rate Your Music's album charts for 2012 for the first 3 or 4 months of the year. And then over time, basically, people forgot about it now to some degree, and it's not what the guys in Pepe Deluxe are trying to think of to do in terms of making their music and releasing. But I think because there was such a lull, such a long gap between this album and the one that came after it, they put out a few things. I might talk about that in the next video, a few singles and everything. I think that they became a little bit, like the momentum they gained from this, whatever level of momentum, I think it was really early in the year in 2012. By the end of the year, not everyone was talking about it as much that I saw on like the blogosphere and, you know, social media. Well, social media wasn't quite what it was in 2012, what it is now, or even the last, say, 5 years. I think if they had put out 1 or 2 records since between 2021 and this album would still be sort of appreciated the way it probably should, and maybe over time it still will be. I don't fully understand still why it's still considered somewhat esoteric, even though it's got the name, and that people don't get it because the songs are very accessible, even though there's a ton going on in the songs. It's a little bit of the same syndrome of Toy Matinee that Nick and Lex were talking about. While this is super well performed and produced, the average music listener who likes pop music, it's a little too much for them to take in, I guess. And someone like me who listens to progressive rock, people on the progressive rock scene. But even among progressive rock fans, and I've kind of contended, the psych community and everything, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard kind of gained the audience that Pepe Deluxe potentially could have. And you could say the Avalanches to an extent, because the Avalanches are similar. The Avalanches are more similar to the early stuff, but the Avalanches are more well-known, more famous than Pepe Deluxe. Even though Pepe Deluxe, like I said, some of their stuff has been used in commercials, and they did a soundtrack for that Angry Birds game or movie. I think it was a game. But they don't care that much. Obviously, it's not that. It's more important. The art is more important to them, and that's why this record stands out to me, because I really appreciate musicians and artists that are doing their own art for the art's sake more than anything else. I still have to like it, but I just find it so well composed, so well produced. I find the different motifs, the different parts, the different melodies, the different harmonies. There's so much to unpack with it and so much to enjoy, and it stood up. I'm not sick of anything. I'm still discovering things about it now 12 years later. So the only thing that sucks is it's like you put out a record this good. I've seen this before. How do you put a record out after that that's as good? And we'll find out when I get into the next record, and we'll find out when the next record comes out, obviously. The next record being, of course, which I have on vinyl too, Phantom Cabinet Volume 1, which will be next week, and then Comix Sonix in 2 weeks. I don't know. I've come to learn that I'd almost rather a band and artist put out one unbelievable statement landmark record, their masterpiece, and if they never put out anything as good, everything else is gravy. I still want them to. I still want them to make more music, of course, but the expectation levels. Let's say if Kevin Gilbert was still alive today, I probably would have been disappointed by him probably half a dozen times. But I always thought that, well, The Shaming of the True, he could have made a record better than that. I still think he probably could have, but then again, it's when you set the bar that high, you can't go anywhere higher, and it's really hard to even match it. But give them credit. These guys are perfectionists, and I like a lot of this record. Although I was comparing this to Small League Sing Ship's album last year, Low Tide. I find that this album I didn't enjoy after 2021, and getting to more as much as I maybe joined Low Tide. Though I haven't been listening to Low Tide this year, so I need to go back to that. But I listened to it once in the last 6 months. So anyway, thank you for watching. What do you think of Queen of the Wave? I'll link, of course, the Spotify link to stream it. But thank you for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you thought of this. And we got, I don't know about tomorrow. I'm not off tomorrow, but I may be able to do a video. I may do a calendar update or start going on 1993. But again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. One more thing to add, just to reiterate. I think it makes sense as much as... I don't think I'll do it like the Thud tracks, because I just went through the whole track list. I guess it depends on what I uncover, but I think this is actually on Spotify, so people could listen to this, unlike all those extra Thud tracks at this point from Kevin Gilbert. I think it would be worth it at some point. Maybe around, like I said, maybe around the time I'm getting through the Pepe Deluxe series. Maybe I'll do a little bit of a review of all those extra tracks, like the few extra tracks that they released between the last 2 records, and then this as a kind of combination, because like the Thud, like this sucker, like this, I never fully did a review and dissected and went into depth about this sucker. But again, because it was Kevin Gilbert, I wanted to kind of really give more attention to each track. And I know those tracks a little more intimately than all the tracks on Queen of the Wave, as much as I love it. But I think at least I'll try to do, whether it be a 20, 30, 40-minute video maybe, a more in-depth review of the bonus tracks on here, all the extra tracks. I know there's a lot of stuff like with manipulation, with Speak and Spell, which they did a track that was kind of influenced by that. And then maybe the story. So it's sort of like Queen of the Wave, the concept / bonus tracks video, which... that maybe I don't know if it'll be sometime. It could be in the fall even, or maybe in July. I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.